Good morning, Mega Podlings. It's Crazy Joe. How are ya? It is, let's see. I want to get this back far enough that my whole head's in the shot. I guess I can move back a little. Yeah, there we go. It's as good as it's going to get, I'm afraid. How are you? Good morning, Mega Podlings. I see Backwin is here. I see my good buddy Greg from Greg's Game Room is here. I want my slaw, Brandon Sullivan. Good to see everybody. Backwin says, hey, everybody. Hope you're all having a great Tuesday. Craig says, it's Tuesday? I've lost track. I think we all have at this point. Oh, man. I didn't put the fan over here, and I'm starting to regret it because I'm a little hot. Of course, I have been kind of jumping around getting things set up over here. How's everybody doing? It is Tuesday. That's why we're crazy after dark. Joey Baseball's here. Sav is here. Noah's here. Hello to everybody. Seeing some of you guys for the second time today because some of you were over in the Rick stream earlier. The Rick stream. There we go. Bohemian Movies and More. How are you doing today, Chris? You're doing good, Bohemian. How are you? Jesse is here. Everybody's here today. Look at this. My head's still getting a little bit cut off. I don't know. I need to get an optimal distance between camera and face. So what's everyone doing? It's Tuesday. It's been an exciting week, hasn't it? We got some good movie news last week. Or I think we got some exciting movie news. I never believed Henry Cavill was done as Superman. It didn't make sense when they were saying Henry Cavill's done as Superman, and then we started reading the stories in the Hollywood Reporter, and the Hollywood Reporter is about as reputable as you get. But if you read the story they were printing, yeah, their headline said Henry Cavill's out as Superman. But if you actually read the story itself wasn't actually saying he was out as Superman. It was saying contract negotiations fell through for a cameo in Shazam, and that Warner Brothers had no further plans for Superman. And I always read that as, hey, we don't have plans for Superman right now. We'll start contract negotiations for Superman when we have plans for Superman. Right now we don't, and we're not going to sign you to a contract when we don't know what we're doing with you yet. That's always been the way I read it, and it seems I was right, because Henry Cavill, we're hearing, is probably back as Superman. Connor says, oh, Sparrowman says hello from the Netherlands. Hello, Sparrowman. I really like that Woody Woodpecker icon you got there. Connor says, did you see Space Force? I tried to watch the first 3 episodes but could not get into it. Well, Connor, spoiler alert for the podcast we're going to be recording later, excuse me. I didn't think Space Force looked good. I hated the trailers for Space Force. The trailers for Space Force I thought were completely unfunny. Especially the whole singing along to Kokomo thing. I'm like, okay, this is kind of a cheap laugh. We're just going to have them sing to a song. And I don't know, it didn't look good. Well, I watched the first 2.5 episodes, not 3, 2.5. I bailed halfway through the second. Halfway through the third episode, I bailed because Christine saw I was watching it and was like, hey, you're watching this without me? I wanted to watch this. And I'm like, I didn't know you wanted to watch this. You never mentioned that you wanted to watch this. So I turned it off. I'm going to pick the show up watching it with her from now on. But so I've seen 2.5 episodes. And I can tell you, the first episode, painfully unfunny. Not funny at all. I thought the trailers were unfunny, so I watched that first episode and I'm like, wow, yeah, this sucks. Then we got to episode 2. Episode 2 was hilarious. Episode 2 was all about them trying to teach a chimp to repair a piece of this space station, and I was dying on that second one. And then the third one, I only saw half of it, but what I saw was okay. But that second episode made me realize, I got to watch this whole show. So, yeah, first episode, really weak. Second episode, really strong. But, yeah, I got to watch the rest now. Backwin says he's watching Avatar right now. Am I frozen? Saying no connection. Can you guys see me? I'm getting no connection over here. Well, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to assume you can see me. Let's hope. Okay. I'm fine. All right. On my iPad, it says I'm frozen. Anyway. Noah says, got up at 5:30 to binge the final 9 episodes of Fuller House. They were released on a Tuesday? Usually doesn't Netflix release shows on a Friday, I always thought. Joey Baseball says, I left a comment on your Sonic video explaining why there's no featurette about the design. Yeah, it was your crazy conspiracy theories. Like, that's already been disproven. That has already been disproven because the toys bear the original design. So they wouldn't be selling toys that had the old unpopular design. So yeah, that's completely a conspiracy theory that has no basis in fact. Backwind says, finished watching the first disc of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 5 and almost finished Netflix's The Punisher. Still haven't watched Netflix's The Punisher. But you can't go wrong with Star Trek The Next Generation. I mean, there's really only one way to do better than Star Trek The Next Generation, and that's 2 ways to do better. The original series and Deep Space Nine. But I do love The Next Generation. Joey says, did you just say it's been an exciting week? I've been at protests all weekend. I wouldn't call it exciting. Yeah, I accidentally drove through a protest. I was trying to get to a drive-in movie and ended up in the middle of a protest. It was, let's just say, awkward. Let's put it that way. It's awkward. James says, hey, Joe, felt that Henry Cavill would most likely come back for the Snyder Cut and nothing more. Yeah, apparently he's coming back for cameos in multiple DC films. I think personally that the most likely are Shazam 2 and Flash, the Flash movie. I think those are the most likely places. But there's also another rumor going around now that there's going to be a sequel to Man of Steel directed by J.J. Abrams. So there's a lot of rumors going around now. It looks like I have no connection on my iPad anymore, which means I'm going to have to read what you're saying off the little screen on my phone there, which is never the optimal way to do things because it's a little hard to read because it's small. It says I'm offline. Why am I offline? Is our internet down? Hang on a second. Hey, Christine! She's probably on the 3rd floor and can't hear me. They were just watching a movie on Vudu. So if the internet is down, the Vudu should have gone out. But they're up on the 3rd floor now, so I don't know. This says I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. It's just I'm not going to be able to read what you guys are saying nearly as well over there, unfortunately. All right, that's what we got. I cannot access the internet on this iPad. Let's see what you guys are saying over here. This is not the optimal way to do things. Oh, Greg says reboot the iPad. All right. Greg says reboot the iPad. Let's try this. Joey said, I haven't gone out once since this started. That's not true. I've been out a couple times. We didn't go anywhere at all until Kira got sick. Then she had to go to the hospital. And that was the first time we left the house since this whole pandemic started. But ever since then, I've gone out to the store a few times. But generally speaking, I haven't been out much. James says, say, Joe, ever seen the movie Brain Twisters? It's pretty decent. I have not. I actually haven't heard of Brain Twisters. I'll have to look that one up. All right, guys, it's hard to read your chats. What movie did you see at the drive-in? I didn't make it to the drive-in. I got caught in a protest, unfortunately. So I was on my way to the drive-in. I was actually going to ask Brandon Sullivan, you still here? I was going to ask if you wanted to meet me. I was going to the Delsey drive-in. I thought we could be socially distant in cars, just opposite each other, wave through the windows. Hey, how you doing? And in our own car, very socially distant, safe. But I never made it to the drive-in, unfortunately, because I found myself in a very, very, well, let's just say I was out of the house for 2.5 hours and didn't go anywhere because the traffic was, shall we say, bumper to bumper. Yeah, there was not the optimal way to spend a Saturday night. Let me put it this way. But then I came home and watched the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs. So you could argue I did make it to the drive-in. Yeah, no internet on this iPad. I just did a full reboot. It says you're offline. Check your connection. and yet I'm attached to the Wi-Fi. Greg says he cut his own hair yesterday. I cut my own hair, well, several weeks ago, but I did this. I sound like the kid on the X-Files. I made this. Well, I don't know how exciting of a podcast this is going to be, but let me try connecting to the 5G network. No, it says no internet connection. It looks to me... Oh, wait. The 5G may have done it. I'm back. I can read your comments again. Yay! So how have you been the last couple minutes while I was out? Brandon says, did you watch both movies with Joe Bob? No, I watched Q the Winged Serpent. That was all I watched, was Q the Winged Serpent. Boredom Strikes is here. Hello, Boredom Strikes. All right, I've got your questions back. Bohemian says, I was planning on getting HBO Max, but I can't because it's not on Roku. HBO Max is a complete and utter failure. It is an embarrassment, quite frankly. Warner Media, AT&T, they should be horrified with how incredibly poor the launch of HBO Max went. Not only is it not available on Roku and Fire Stick, so the largest percentage of the streaming audience can't even get their service. And then on top of that, their content is piss poor. It was billed as the Warner Media streaming service, the Warner Media digital home for Warner's entire archives of stuff, and what is not on there is staggering. Like, of all the classic sitcoms Warner Brothers has made over the years, now I understand some, like Full House, Perfect Strangers, are under contract to Hulu. You do have to respect the existing contracts, I get it. But Night Court and Full House and if you look, the Warner, the history of Warner Brothers, the classic sitcoms on HBO Max, there's 3 of them. Just 3. That's it. Just 3. Fresh Prince, Big Bang Theory, and Friends. Nothing else in terms of classic sitcoms. It's really terrible. Gloop Trekker is here. Hello, Gloop Trekker. Seeing your Lost in Space robot behind you reminds me, I saw Walmart is selling a talking Robbie the robot. I got him. He's around the corner there. And I have to thank our good friend Heath from Serial at Midnight for making me aware about those, because it was after seeing him spotlighted on one of his videos that I went and bought one. I really wish I had the fan here right now. Anyway. James says, all right, what movies do you hate that everyone likes? Easy, The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride. I do not understand the crazy adoration that movie gets. I'm not a fan. I also don't care for Top Gun. Top Gun's a movie people seem to love that I never cared for, because, I don't know, we used to watch it in the video store. I worked in a video store, back in the early 90s, and they used to put Top Gun on all the time. And it's like every time it was on, all I heard was, take my breath away, take my breath away. Like, they just kept playing that song throughout the whole movie. Take my breath. I got so sick of it. So yeah, I am not a fan of Top Gun. Not a fan. Anyway, Sab says, I watched Guns Akimbo. Did you like it? I love Guns Akimbo. Lisa's here. Hey, everyone. Anyone else under city curfew? The state of Rhode Island is a mess. Well, there is a protest going on in my town right now. It's being billed as a peaceful protest, and I hope to God it is a peaceful protest, but I'm not there, so I don't know. But here's hoping. Here's hoping that it's a peaceful protest, because it's going on not too far from here. James says, I do appreciate Warner Media for what they tried to do, and I felt they really should have pre-planned their launch better. I'm not getting any other streaming services because I can watch my stuff online. Yeah, I don't recommend HBO Max at all. Gregory White says the drive-in in Springfield is having trouble getting the rights to new movies. They're deciding to show classics until they can show new movies again. Well, there aren't any new movies until July. The first new movie to come out is going to be Unhinged. What's Springfield? Every town has a Springfield. I grew up in a Springfield, but I'm assuming you're not talking about the Springfield I grew up in, because the Springfield I grew up in doesn't have a drive-in. So what Springfield are we talking about, Gregory? Connor says, have you seen any Ray Porter's the YouTube channel Lightcast? No. I don't know what. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. I'm not. Greg says he just watched The Princess Bride for me. Don't watch it for me. Watch it for you. But I watched Superman 2 last night. Man, Superman 2. Superman 2. That's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. You're picking the top 10 hero movies of all time. Superman 2's got to be on that list. Superman 2 is just so good. Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Like the scene, I was watching the Donner cut, the scene where Lex and Miss Tessmacher are in the Fortress of Solitude, and Miss Tessmacher's going on about how she has to use the bathroom, and then she disappears, and you hear the flush, I found it! Oh my God, that movie is genius. I love that movie. But it does have that scene, and my daughter was cracking up. My daughter was absolutely cracking up. The scene at the end where Superman goes back and gets revenge on the guy in the diner, it's hilarious because it's like he's Superman, he's got his powers back, and he goes and picks a fight with a human. It's like, that's not cool, Superman. I mean, I know the guy's a jerk, but still, my daughter was cracking up, and my wife's going, because it's the Donner cut, he turned back time. So my wife's like going, and he reversed time, so therefore, that fight in the bar with the guy earlier in the movie never happened because he erased it from existence. So this guy doesn't even know who he is. He just came in and picked a fight with a stranger. I love it. Gregory says Springfield, Illinois. Backwin says, even with their huge lineup, I still didn't want HBO Max because it's too expensive. I'm sticking with Disney Plus. I think if the stuff that we wanted to be on there was on there, it would have been worth it for the expense because it was the same price as regular HBO. It's not like you were paying any more. The problem is they just don't have enough content on there. I mean, if you're already paying for HBO, then by all means get HBO Max because you're getting it's the same amount of money you're already putting out, but you're getting more for your money. James says, does anybody remember Dexter's Lab? It's one of my favorite Cartoon Network shows. Yes, I do remember Dexter's Lab. Brandon says, Delcy has Becky, a new first-run movie this weekend. I've never heard of Becky. Interesting. I don't think I'll try to go to Delcy again because I learned a lesson this Saturday, and that lesson is I don't want to drive through Philly. But you say Delcy has Becky. There's another drive-in in Allentown called Becky's Drive-In, oddly enough. And I am thinking I might try to go to Becky's Drive-In in Allentown, which is a little closer than Delcy anyway. Greg loves Superman. Kneel before Zod. You know, when I got engaged, the first time, when I got engaged to my ex-wife, there was when I went to buy the ring, there was a man working in the jewelry store whose name was Neil Zod. His first name was Neil Zod. Gave me his business card and everything. I loved it. Neil Zod. Greg says, in the scene where Superman says, General, would you care to step outside? What a great scene. It's such a good movie. It's like a perfect movie. It's like a perfect movie, Superman 2. Love that movie. I love everything about that movie. The whole scene at the end with, he switched it. He did it to then. The lights went on out here. Well, he was safe in there. And of course, we had Superman's crystal with us because we bought that at Dragon Con. Greg says, okay, please interpret my last comment correctly. Yeah, the scene where Superman says, General, would you care to step outside? I know what you're talking about, man. I know what you're talking about. Boredom Strike says, Joe, do you believe the rumors that AT&T wants Affleck back as Batman for an HBO Max miniseries? No, absolutely not. I don't believe that at all. I wouldn't be surprised if they coax Affleck back for a cameo in the Flash movie, because I do believe that the Flash movie, because it's the Flashpoint storyline, is going to reboot the timeline so that Pattinson's. I'm pretty sure that's how they're going to bring Pattinson's Batman in to the shared universe. I'm pretty sure the Flash movie is going to be a critical movie. It's part of why I think we're going to see Henry Cavill in that movie. But I wouldn't be surprised if Affleck had a cameo in the beginning, and then at the end it's Robert Pattinson and they play it in with the time travel. That wouldn't shock me at all, especially because you wouldn't even need him to put the costume on. He wouldn't even need to be Batman. He could come in, do a scene as Bruce Wayne. Like, I don't know. I could see them getting, and he does, I think, still owe them a movie. I believe his contract, he does kind of still owe them one movie. So I could see them getting that out of him, like a surprise cameo in the Flash, right before they reboot the timeline. If he comes back, and I don't know that he will, but if he comes back, that would be my guess of how they get Affleck back in there. Beckwin says, "I win. I always win. Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?" Great line. Oh, such a good movie. Who is watching this broadcast? The whole planet. The whole planet. Houston? I love it. I mean, here's the astronauts say, Houston. So he thinks the planet's called Houston, so he goes to the planet Houston. So he lands in Houston, but he doesn't even land in Houston, Texas. Like, you would think he would at least go to Houston, Texas. No, he goes to East Houston, Idaho. That's the town Zod and Ursa and Non go to. East Houston, Idaho. Oh, such a good movie. Bohemian says, "Ooh, what does this button do?" Brandon says, "Becky is a home invasion movie where Kevin James, yes, that Kevin James, plays a neo-Nazi." Well, that sounds interesting. That sounds... I'll have to look for a trailer for that. Toaster Burner says, "Becky's is my local drive-in. Opens this Friday, right by my old elementary, and it's in a safe area of Allentown. Don't worry." Well, I might go this weekend, Toaster Burner. So if you want to go, send me a message. Send me an email at megapodtastic@gmail.com. Tell me if you're going. Maybe we could socially distance ourselves and park next to each other and smile lovingly out our car windows and wave at each other. Let me know. James says, "I think the whole Snyder Cut thing is a publicity stunt." I think it's just to shut people up. I think the Snyder Cut people have been, well, some of them are decent people. I mean, whenever you get a large group of people, you're going to have decent people who just want to see the movie because they like Zack Snyder, they like what he was doing, whatever. But you also got the bad apples, and there was some pretty rude people on the release of the Snyder Cut, like harassing the actors in the studio. I think basically they just wanted to go away. So it's like, give them what they want, make them happy. I don't know. Connor says, "Ray Porter played Darkseid in Justice League. He was cut by Whedon, but he'll be in the Snyder Cut." Okay. I saw an image Snyder posted of like what his Darkseid was going to look like or something, though, and I didn't like the character design. It didn't look like Darkseid at all. Joey Baseball says, "I don't want Vampire Batman." I don't see why you would have a vampire. I don't think they would turn him into a vampire. I don't see any scenario where they would turn Batman into a vampire. James says, "Favorite Looney Tunes character, mine is Bugs Bunny because he has to deal with the annoyed surrounding him. He's kind of like the Joker when you think about it." I love Daffy Duck. I really love Daffy Duck. I like Foghorn Leghorn a lot. And I love Wile E. Coyote. And my daughter is now suddenly obsessed with Wile E. Coyote. That kind of came out of nowhere. Gloop Tracker says, "I see you are practiced in worshiping things that fly. I will bow before you. If it will save lives, it will, beginning with your own. This man is not the president. No man who leads so many would kneel so quickly. Brandon says Becky's has The Invisible Man, The Hunt, or Trolls 2 and Sonic this weekend. Oh, I never saw The Hunt. I want to see The Hunt. And The Invisible Man was one of the movies I was going to see at Delsey last weekend. Last weekend they had The Invisible Man and Bad Boys for Life. Now, I never saw Bad Boys 2. I've seen I just recently watched Bad Boys for the first time. And I didn't care for it. I mean, it was okay. It was perfectly okay, but it was just one of those movies where it's like there's nothing special to this movie. And I always heard Bad Boys 2 was like the crappier of the two. Like, I remember when Bad Boys 2 came out, like, every critic was like, this movie's a half hour too long. It doesn't know when to stop, blah, blah, blah. I remember, like, it got some pretty negative reviews when it came out, Bad Boys 2. So the narrative always was the first one was better than the second one. And it's like, well, and I wasn't crazy about the first one. So if the second one's not as good, that worries me a little. But now I'm hearing from just about everybody, critics, everybody, that Bad Boys 3 is like the best of the three. So, I don't know. Boredom says, Joe, would it bother you if people end up preferring Snyder's cut over Whedon's? I think there's a certain subset of people who are already pre-decided that they're going to prefer the Snyder cut because they have this great affinity for Zack Snyder. I can't imagine it could possibly be better, though, because I've seen what Snyder did already, and I've seen what Whedon did already, and there's nothing in the Snyder superhero movies, Man of Steel especially, I hate Man of Steel, but there's nothing in there that makes me think this is the guy. This is the guy. Whereas I've seen stuff from the Whedon movies that tells me he understands comics, he understands superheroes. And when I say the Whedon movies, I'm including his Avengers movies, his two Avengers and his Justice League. Like, I don't think there's a bad movie in that bunch. Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Justice League, I think they're all fantastic. And they have, especially Justice League. Justice League really has a similar feel to the Avengers. So you could tell it's a Whedon movie in the dialogue. You could tell it's a Whedon movie in how the action is done. Because the Justice League fight scenes are shot the same way as the Avengers fight scenes. Just a reminder, we got Super Chat Hippo with us here today. If you'd like to hear from Super Chat Hippo, you know how. Connor says, who do you think will be the main villain in Batman? I hope it's the Riddler. I don't know. I'm not sure. The Riddler and the Penguin... Honestly, the Riddler and the Penguin have always been second stringers to me in terms of Batman villains. Like, I always said the Joker, Two-Face, those are, like, I think the two big Batman villains, Joker and Two-Face. Those guys pose a threat. They pose a challenge. Riddler, I don't know, I always saw him as kind of a joke. But I'm sure that he's going to be done well. Don't get me wrong. Lisa says... Joey means the Sparkle Vampire is the next Batman. Well, let's not bring up the Sparkle Vampire. I know Robert Pattinson was not a fan of those movies, so we don't need to remind him of a role he played 10 years ago. Home Slice says, are there any drive-in theaters open by you? This weekend there'll be two. The Delsey Drive-In in Vineland, which is an hour away, and Becky's Drive-In, which is around Allentown, which I think is about 30 minutes away, maybe. So Becky's is the closer. Gloop Trekker says, Riddler could be really good if he's written and acted well. I think that's true of most villains. Jeffrey Joe is here. Crazy Joe, if you were blindfolded, could you distinguish between Kermit and Ernie's voices? I think I could. I think there was a time when I was younger when I couldn't have, but now I believe I could. Lisa says, we could get into Bad Boys 2 over 1. I'm not sure what that means. I haven't seen 3. Okay. James says, which Batman voice actor is your favorite? Mine is Kevin Conroy. Olan Soule is my favorite Batman voice actor. He was the voice of Batman on the old Filmation Batman and Robin cartoons. He was the voice of Batman on Sesame Street when Batman would make little animated appearances on Sesame Street. And as most of us probably remember him, he was the voice of Batman on the Super Friends up till the last 2 seasons. The last 2 seasons, he was replaced with Adam West. Adam West was the voice of Batman in like the last 2 seasons of Super Friends. But Olan Soule was the voice of Batman for most of the run of Super Friends. Oh, that's a side conversation. S Rose 40 is here. S Rose 40 says, you like the more childlike take on comic book movies. Some like the darker, more serious style. I like the darker, serious style if it fits the characters. I like what fits the characters best. Superman is not well suited by a dark, serious take, because that's not Superman. That's not who Superman is. That's who Batman is. So if you do something like that with Batman, like the Dark Knight or something, it works totally because that's who Batman is, but that's not who Superman is. So it's like trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't fit because that's not who the character is. And I always say who the character is what makes you a fan of them. You can't just take the name of the character and wrap them up in any package and say, well, that's Superman now. Because if it doesn't act like Superman, like, I'm not a fan just of the name and the costume. Like, it's the character. The character is more than just the name and the costume. I always say, like, things bother me on TV when they'll kind of reinvent a character to the point where it's a whole new character. And I'm like, well, we liked the character, the existing character. We liked that character. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel, because there's a reason people are a fan of it. Jeffrey Joe says, how much HBO Max viewing have you done since you reposted your review? None. I have not watched it at all since I posted my review, mainly because it's not on Roku. I would have to watch it on my phone. I watched it on my phone to watch enough, see what was on there, give a review. But I wasn't going to sit like this on my phone. I could put it on PlayStation 4, but the PlayStation 4 isn't even hooked up to the TV most of the time because, there's only so many HDMI outputs. So I would have to plug in a special device just to watch HBO Max. Yeah, until they're on Roku, I'm probably never going to watch HBO Max. Scott says, hi, Joe and Chatters. Hope all are safe and well. Well, you too, Scott. Good to see you. Kyle's here. Sorry he's late. Don't worry, Kyle. You can play it back from the beginning. James says, Olan Soule is okay, but I prefer Adam West because he can play a serious role and a silly role with Batman. Well, I think Olan Soule could do that both because, well, he did. On Super Friends, some of those stories could be pretty silly, so I think he could play the silly as well. Lisa says, dang keyboard. We like Bad Boys 2, but don't like 1. Haven't seen 3 yet. See, so far I've only seen 1. But I never heard very good things about 2. But I don't know. I never saw it. Jeffrey Joe says, Crazy Joe, did you submit a question to the recent Muppet Guys Talking live cast? And if so, was it answered? I didn't. Greg says, will there ever be another Terminator movie? God, I hope not. I think we're done with... I've had enough Terminator. I've just had enough Terminator. If there was, I wouldn't mind seeing a continuation of Terminator Genesis, because Terminator Genesis was designed to be a 3-movie arc. And I don't know if Terminator Genesis was good or bad, quite frankly, because without seeing where the story was going, without seeing where the next chapter of that story is, it's very hard for me to comment on the first chapter. As it is, I don't think it's a terrible movie. I think it's just kind of a more of the same movie. Like when Christine and I walked out of Terminator Genesis, I know our reaction was, what did you think of that? It was a Terminator movie. Yeah, it was a Terminator movie. That was our reaction. It was a Terminator movie. Our reaction was just kind of like, well, you get what you expect. It's exactly a Terminator movie. But I always thought the second part could have maybe elevated it if they... depending on what they had in store, but we never found out what they had in store. So I don't know. But the bottom line is I'm just not that invested. I don't care really if I see. I I only need 3 Terminator movies. Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and Terminator 3. I'm good. Terminator 3 kind of creates the time loop. We see them. I'm perfect. And 3 was a great ending. I ended at 3. I'm happy with that. Noah says, which one do you like more, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, or Mork and Mindy? I'm not a huge fan of any of them, but of those 3, I'm probably going to say Happy Days. I'm kind of fascinated by late series Happy Days after Ron Howard left the show, because the show should have ended probably. I don't know that it should have gone on another 4 or 5 years. It went on like at least four more years, maybe 5. I don't know. But the show really became a shadow of its former self, because the Fonz now got top billing, but you no longer had his friendship with Richie as an anchor. So the Fonz always felt kind of out of place. Like, now I'm the main character, but I was never designed to be the main character. I was designed to be the supporting character to this other guy. And then they started doing weird things with him, like making him, like, giving him a girlfriend who was a single mom, and Heather Rourke from Poltergeist became like his stepdaughter. And then they started bringing in other characters like Roger, famous so-called show killer. His name's escaping me now. Jefferson from Married with Children. Why can't I think of his name? I'm sorry. I know his name, and I can't think of it. Anyway. And then just more and more characters started getting introduced. Characters you don't even remember the names of got introduced as regulars. So it's one of these shows that just really outlived itself. So Ted McGinley, thank you, Clue Tracker, Ted McGinley. It's just such. I'd actually rather watch those later season episodes than the early season episodes, because they're not good, but they're fascinating. There's something fascinating about those episodes. Like why was this show still on? Why did this show go on so long? It feels almost like a different show. It almost feels like the unsuccessful spin-off, but it's I don't know. Those episodes just draw me in for all the wrong reasons. Does anyone else get like that with the late season episodes of Happy Days? Like, they draw me in like with a tractor beam, but not for the reasons they should. Not because it's so good I have to see it, but because it's like, and it's not even like it's so bad either. Like, there's worse television. It's not like the most hideous train wreck of TV you've ever seen. It's just so incredibly average. You know what I mean? I don't know. Does anyone else get that? Esra says, I'd rather see Arnold in things like The Last Stand at this point. James says, there's also a Fast and the Furious cartoon on Netflix. Thoughts? No interest on that. Connor says, you like Tron. What did you think of Tron Legacy? I love Tron Legacy. I'm so upset we haven't gotten a Tron 3. I really want a Tron 3. Look at a Tron Legacy light cycle right here. A light cycle from Tron Legacy. I call this the space bar, and just about everything on it is space related except Tron. Tron is not. I guess that's cyberspace related. I don't know. The cyberspace bar. Greg says Tron Legacy, totally underrated movie. I agree. Again, if you'd like to hear from Super Chat Hippo is here today. So I thought I would talk about 3 movies that aren't on Blu-ray that I really wish were on Blu-ray. And oddly enough, all 3 of these movies were made in the same year, which is interesting. I don't know why, it's just a coincidence, but these 3 movies were all made in the same year, and they're 3 movies that are not on Blu-ray that I wish was on Blu-ray. So here's the first one. Six String Samurai, 1998. All 3 of these movies are from 1998. Has anyone seen Six String Samurai? When this movie came out in 1998, it was a bit of a phenomenon because it quickly became a very popular cult film along the lines of like an Evil Dead. This was one of those movies that people were staying up watching late at night with friends, drinking beer. Like, this was a cult film on the level of, not on the level of, I mean, obviously Evil Dead 2 was much, 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 much more popular, but this had buzz around it in 98. I think it's a film that's mostly been forgotten. Nobody seems to talk about Six String Samurai anymore. I never hear anyone bring it up. So it's one of these films that had a buzz and a popularity for 5 minutes, and then it just seemed to fade. But this movie's never been on Blu-ray, and this DVD, you can still get it. It's not out of print. You can get this DVD. It's a pretty cheap DVD. But it's a terrible DVD. It's not in anamorphic widescreen. It's pillar boxed. You actually can get a better picture of this movie streaming it for free on YouTube. The official studio, which is Palm Pictures, put it up on YouTube. So you can go watch this on YouTube right now for free. And the quality on YouTube is better than the quality of this DVD. And that's tragic. And I've written to Vinegar Syndrome and Shout Factory and a few other of the boutiques and said, how about Six String Samurai from 1998? And sadly, I just don't think enough people remember the movie. So it's unfortunate. It's basically a takeoff, or it's sort of like a rock and roll cult film takeoff of Wizard of Oz. Buddy is on his way to Vegas to become the new king, but Death is also on his way to Vegas, and it's just got this very Wizard of Oz tone to it. I love this movie. How many of you have seen this? If you haven't seen this, I recommend it. Go over, watch it on YouTube. Eric Perry says I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Lance Mungia. I think Lance Mungia. He didn't direct much. He did this. He did one of the bad Crow sequels. This is a much better film than the Crow. But yes, Eric, that's right. And in fact, I wrote to him. I found him on Facebook and wrote to him once and asked him, hey, are we ever going to get Six String Samurai on Blu-ray? And he didn't seem to have an answer. He said he'd like to see it on Blu-ray. But and Jeffrey Joe says, I want to see it now. You can watch it on YouTube. And honestly, that's the best way to watch. That's better than watching this DVD, which is a shame. You know, a lot of people, a lot of those of us who a lot of you who watch this channel, I know, are advocates for physical media. So it's a shame that I'm telling you the free version on YouTube is better than the DVD, but sadly it is. The Blu-ray version, I believe, or the YouTube version is, I believe, in HD, and this is not. It's in anamorphic widescreen. It'll fill up your whole screen in the proper aspect ratio. This will not. So you're better off watching it on YouTube than picking up the disc. And it's a shame I got to say that, but I got to say that. And that would not be the case if it would get remastered and put on Blu-ray. Frank Castle says, who is the main actor? His name is Jeffrey Falcon. I haven't seen him in anything else. I will tell you this. Oh, it's got music by, the scores by Brian Tyler, who went on to do like Iron Man 3 and some of the Marvel movies. It's got music all through it by the Red Elvises, who were a rockabilly band, a Russian rockabilly band. They're great. Their soundtrack to this movie is great. If you've never heard the Red Elvises, Google their main song from this movie. Google Red Elvises Boogie on the Beach, and it's terrific. And the movie was produced. The executive producer on the movie is Leanna Creel. And if you don't know who Leanna Creel is, she played Tori on Saved by the Bell. The final season of Saved by the Bell. Tori, the new girl who got introduced in the last season, she produced this movie. She's also a triplet. There's 3 Creel sisters. They were the stars of Disney's The Parent Trap 3 and The Parent Trap 4 Hawaiian Honeymoon. Her and her two sisters, the triplets. And then Leanna, went on to play Tori on Saved by the Bell. And then she went on to become a producer of this movie. So this is the first movie that is one of my most wished for Blu-rays, Six String Samurai. My next one is also from the year 1998 by some strange coincidence. Once again, it is on a disc that is not enhanced for widescreen TV, non-anamorphic, pillar-boxed widescreen. And this is a controversial film because it goes to some really, really, really dark places. And yet, it's a comedy. The film is Happiness by Todd Solondz. I love this movie. It's not an easy movie to watch, and quite frankly, you feel like you need a shower when it's done because the movie is it's one of these movies that makes you uncomfortable. It really, really does. It goes to some dark places, but I think this is the best movie Todd Solondz ever made. Todd Solondz is best known for Welcome to the Dollhouse, which is a good movie, but Jeffrey Joe says the movie's got so much balls. It really does. It really does. Like, there's a character in this movie, one of the main characters, who is just downright despicable. He, just the most, I don't want to say it right out. But he is a criminal who is responsible for one of the most heinous crimes of all. It's one of the main characters. And I've heard some people say that this film glorifies that kind of behavior. And I don't believe that is true, because when you're watching the movie, they're not making this guy out to be a hero. And you are creeped out by what he's doing. At least you should be creeped out by what he's doing. And when you walk away, you're like, oh my God, I want to take a shower now because that just made me feel icky. But at the same time, it's a compelling movie. And it's interesting, and I really, 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 really like this movie. Jeffrey Joe says it's brilliant because it takes such a despicable story. It takes despicable storylines, and yet you respect what the filmmakers doing. Absolutely, absolutely. Eric Perry says he did the Tara Reid Crow film. Oh yeah, Lance Mungia did the Tara Reid Crow film. My cousin, who worked at a mom and pop DVD shop, showed me Six String Samurai back in the day. They definitely need a Blu-ray. I agree. Noah says there's a Three's Company complete series. Three's Company complete series is out of print and going for $300 to $500. Wow, I didn't know that was out of print. But this movie is another one I recommend. It's got Philip Seymour Hoffman in it. It's got Dylan Baker. It's got Lara Flynn Boyle. And this is not for all audiences. I tell you, read a review of this before you watch it, because this movie may not be for you. It's not for everyone. I understand if it's not for you. I get it. I totally get it. But this is a movie that I caught on at a friend's house one night. A friend was watching it, and I went out and bought it the next day. Like, I went out and bought this movie the next day because I just couldn't believe this movie, quite frankly. So that's the other film from 1998 that should have a Blu-ray release. And I got one more here. One more. And this is a film I love. If you watch my poster collection video, the poster is hanging in my house. 1998's Free Enterprise, starring William Shatner and Eric McCormick and a guy named Reifer Wagle, who went on to become a sportscaster in Missouri, I think, or St. Louis. He's a sportscaster now. He's not even an actor anymore. But I love this movie. I felt when I saw this movie, I was watching this movie and I thought, this is my life. It's like someone followed me and took notes, because the characters of Mark and Robert really reminded me of the characters of Dave Perillo and Crazy Joe back at the time this came out, which was 98. I have so much love for this movie. The director of this movie, Robert Meyer Burnett, has his own channel here on YouTube called The Burnettwork, which you can go check out right here on YouTube. He's also a regular on the John Campea Show every week. But Robert Meyer Burnett directed this. His friend Mark Altman wrote this. I have been a fan of it since the day it came out. It was a blind buy for me in 1999. The movie came out in theaters in LA in 98. It was released on Blu-ray, or not Blu-ray, DVD in 99. And that's when I saw it, when it came to DVD, because I don't live in LA, so I didn't see any of its very, very small amount of theater showings in 98. But it was a blind buy because I read about it online, and I said, that sounds like a movie I want to see. It's basically Swingers with Star Trek fans. And I don't even think you need to be a Star Trek fan, because these characters happen to be Star Trek fans. But it really could be any kind of nerdy franchise. They could be Star Wars fans, they could be Ghostbusters fans. It doesn't matter. The personality types and the way they act, you're going to recognize it even if you're not a Star Trek fan. If you travel in any nerd communities no nerdy, geeky people. You're going to get these personality types no matter what franchise or thing the people are devoted to. It just, in this case, happens to be Star Trek. Jesse says, me and Joe aren't strangers to the John Campea show. That's right, Jesse. I often see you there. Jesse, have you seen this movie? Have you seen Robert Meyer Burnett's Free Enterprise? My brother just sent me a text, and I just saw director's cut watching now, but it flashed so fast, I don't know what he's watching the director's cut of. Jeffrey Joe says, Joe, what's the best documentary based on Star Trek fans? Free Enterprise or Trekkies? Well, this isn't a documentary. This isn't a documentary. This is a scripted story about some Star Trek fans who happen to live in LA. It's basically swingers with Star Trek fans. They're friends. They both work in the movie business, and they just accidentally run into William Shatner, and it's just a great movie. Just a great movie. Now, earlier today, O'Connor says, do you ever watch the movie Trivia Schmodown? Robert Meyer Burnett's a regular. I haven't. My brother's been trying to get me to watch that, and I haven't had a chance yet. Brandon says, I just watched that last week. It's streaming on Amazon. This is, earlier today, if you saw Rick did a live stream earlier today. He used a phrase that I've never used. He used the phrase Frankenstein set, which I kind of liked. And according to Rick, a Frankenstein set is when you kind of have two different versions of a movie and put them together in one case. This is, by Rick's definition, a Frankenstein set. And the movie came out in '99 by a company called Pioneer, and this is the disc. This is the disc here. And several years later, it came out again from another company, Anchor Bay. Anchor Bay put it out. But it was a better disc. More bonus features. Now 2 discs instead of 1. Enhanced for widescreen TVs, blah, blah, blah. But the original disc had special features on it that weren't on the new disc. So I didn't want to get rid of them. So I bought the new disc, which was 2 discs, and I just put them in a package all together. So I have all 3 discs, the original and then the 2-disc new set in the one case. But in here, you'll notice I have both of the inserts. This is the insert that came with the second edition, but behind it, if I can get to it, is the original insert from the original release. And it's the same with the DVD cover art. They're both in here. You see the re-release one here, but if I reach in, the original cover art from the original release is in here behind it. So I could separate them at any time and put them in 2 cases if I choose to do that, but it saves disk space having it this way. And shelf space is an important thing. S-Rose says, what's the movie where the Star Trek fans get into it with Star Wars fans at a convention? That is Fanboys. I am not particularly a fan of that show. Noah says, I watch the John Campea show every day. I think I've seen you in the chat there, Noah. I think I've said hi to you. Gary is here. Really, I've never seen it. I've seen the older seasons, but not the movie. I'm not sure what show you're talking about, Gary. Gloop Trekker says, Rose, you're thinking of Fanboys. Jamel says, hey, Joe, where is Super Chat Hippo? Super Chat Hippo is right here, Jamel. He's right next to me. We haven't heard from him today. And we've got like 3 minutes left. So if you want to hear from Super Chat Hippo, we got 3 minutes left. Because at 10 o'clock, I do have to end this stream. And I have to meet Mr. J2H over at the computer. So we can record the next episode of the all-new MegaPodTastic Podcast, which will be out this Friday. Just a reminder, if you become a Patreon, if you become a Patreon member, go to patreon.com/MegaPodTastic. If you become a Patreon member, you will get access to the video feed of our podcasts the night we record them. We record them on Tuesday. I edit them, put it out in audio form on Fridays. So most people get the new podcast on Fridays. Well, Patreon members have access the night we record it. So we're going to record it now. And a little bit before midnight, maybe 11:30, it's 11:45, somewhere around there, Patreon members are going to have access to what we just recorded days ahead of everyone else. And they'll get the video. So you'll get to see J2H and I doing our podcast recording, whereas everyone else only gets to hear the audio. It's also a rough cut. I haven't put in the music and the little promos and bumpers. I do that after the fact in editing, so that's not there. It's the raw cut, but it's available to Patreon members right away, the night we record. James says Gary is referring to South Park. Okay. South Park. I used to be a South Park fan, but I haven't watched it in years. Scott says, Joe, have you seen Bad News from the makers of The Young Ones? I haven't. James says, favorite season of South Park? It would be an early season. I stopped watching it probably in the early 2000s. So it would be one of the earlier seasons. Jeffrey says, I'm excited to watch the podcast. If I see the rough cut, do I get to see you swearing? You might. You might. Brandon says, Fanboys is entertaining, but Free Enterprise is a little more reality-based. Yeah, I saw people in this movie that I recognized. I saw myself in this movie. Fanboys, it's too broad. It's like a Waka Waka comedy, whereas this is like you watch it and you go, I know that guy. I'm friends with that guy. I went to school with that guy. Whereas I don't think you know anyone quite like Fanboys. And Fanboys also kind of hinges so much on the non-existent fictional feud between Star Trek and Star Wars fans, because everyone knows Star Trek fans like Star Wars. Everyone knows Star Wars fans like Star Trek. Sci-fi fans like sci-fi. That's what it comes down to. If you're a sci-fi fan, you like sci-fi. I don't know any sci-fi fan that's like, I'm a sci-fi fan, but I only watch this one show. No. Star Trek fans watch Star Wars. Star Trek fans watch Babylon 5. Star Trek fans watched Farscape, Alien Nation, Battlestar Galactica, Doctor Who. Because if you're a Star Trek fan, odds are you're a science fiction fan. So the notion that there is this great rivalry between the Star Wars and Star Trek fans is just nonsense. There never has been. And I don't know anyone who's like, I only watch this. I don't watch that other thing. I mean, it's very silly. Jeffrey says, do you classify Star Wars as science fiction? To a degree. It's probably more science fantasy. It's probably got more Lord of the Rings in it than oh, Scott with the super chat at the last minute, right at 10. Super chat, Hippo thanks you, Scott, and I thank you. He's singing for you, Scott. He's singing for you. And Noah says, what's some TV shows you would like to see a complete series DVD release? Freddy's Nightmares, The Muppet Show, with season 4 and 5 included. The Muppets Tonight. A Blu-ray set of Babylon 5. Better quality. Jeffrey Joe says the Tortellis. I'll second that. I'll take the Tortellis. I'll take Dear John. I was a big fan of Dear John. That just disappeared. Scott says, stay safe, everyone. Crazy times. I agree. We're going to wrap this up. Gary, before I wrap this up, do you have a stream ending joke for us? Bob needs a Blu-ray. Oh, Bob. Yeah, I still got Bob here. I still got those movies or just TV shows that we were looking at last week right behind me. I never put them away. Isn't that bad? I never put them away. I still got Bob. I still got News Radio, WKRP. They're sitting right here. And here's Gary with the stream ending joke. A pastor, a priest, and a rabbit walk into a bar. Bartender says, hey, rabbit, what'll you have? The rabbit says, I don't know. I'm only here because of autocorrect. That's a good one, Gary. That's a good one. All right, I got to end this. I got to get to the computer and do a podcast. New podcast Friday. New podcast tonight if you're a Patreon member. Keep wearing those pajamas. Good night, everybody.